Cachamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Well, we have a change in topic for our 78th installment of the GeoGearHeads. I'm Daryl W4, again with the bad cop, but Ricky Briganti had a scheduling conflict arise this weekend, so we were going to talk about geocaching.com's Caches Along Route feature for this show instead.
You know, that's a very useful tool and one of the many reasons to pay for the geocaching.com premium membership. It's a topic that we've wanted to address, and it's a great time to cover it with so much of our audience hitting the road over the next few weeks on these family vacations.
As you did recently.
Yeah, the family and I are out right now on a quick getaway. If you're watching the podcast, and you can watch it live on YouTube and Google+, you know, that's when I make all the mistakes that Daryl edits out later in the audio version. So you may notice that things look and sound a little different for me tonight. In fact, by the time you listen to this episode for the audio-only version, I'll be back sleeping comfortably in my own bed.
That's fine, and hopefully it gives you some time to unwind with the wife, but get maybe a cache or two along the way, and even some new locations to forage in Wallaby.
You know, I've already grabbed a cache at a viewpoint. I stopped there for a learning experience for the kids and to grab a couple of family photos. And, of course, I had to see if there was a cache nearby. And sure enough, there was one within 100 feet.
Nice. Now, next week, we are recording on Independence Day here in the U.S., and for that, we're going to be talking about caching by yourself. That can be a little bit risky, but also a whole bunch of fun. Please call in your tips and experiences while solo caching to our voicemail line at 206-350-3647 or email them to geogearheads@cachamaniacs.com.
Now, we're also going to be joined by our very knowledgeable friend, Rich Owings of tracklog.com. I'm sorry, GPS Tracklog. Again, for episode 81, to talk about the current GPSRs and what might be coming. I'm pretty excited about that show, especially since I just got my new Oregon 600 here. And Garmin just announced their new Android-based Montera.
Yeah, and we'll have a lot more to say about those on the 18th during the recording of episode 81, which you can watch us record live through the Google Plus Hangout on Air or YouTube. Just watch the GeoGearHeads Google Plus page, or head over to cachamaniacs.com page, and you'll find the post right there about 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on the 18th with the video embed.
And our thanks go out to another listener who made a PayPal donation to support the show. And on top of that, another GeoGearhead listener to try out Wallaby. If you want to support these shows, you can find the link on the left side of the Cachamaniacs page, just like Mickey DV did.
Yeah, and one note before we move on to the caches along route, we have seen many GeoGearHeads listeners sign up for the Wallaby and friending us. We've heard some of them are still having some trouble wrapping their heads around the game. The big thing that most seem to have problems with is the pouch versus the sets. So here's a quick tip for anyone wondering about how to save an item to the set. Go to the item in the pouch and tap it to open up that card. From the upper right corner, tap the button for options and pick the Add to Set button. Now that item has been saved into the set and removed from your pouch. Any new items you pick up which are already in your sets will then have a small check mark in the upper left corner, so you'll be able to easily tell if you need that item or not.
Yeah, now once you've saved it to a set, it's locked, so people can't request it for trades either. You know, if you want to pull them out of a set, you can do that, but it costs 500 honeycomb. Better yet, you can swap it for the same item of a different number without penalty.
Yeah, so we are working with the Wallaby team and hope to have a show dedicated to the game sometime after the release of version 1.2, and we'll get more into it at that point. But to all of you whom friended us in the game and have traded with us, thank you. And I'm happy to say I have now completed every item currently available, branded, and all of the set items except for the one set that still has items not available yet.
Wow. I'm only about a third of the way through there, so
I
you've
couldn't
beat
have
me
done
out.
it without all of the help from everyone on Wallaby that's helped me trade, and it's really been amazing. And I love helping out some of our listeners and helping get them up. Some other people who aren't listeners, getting them up and getting their counts up, yeah, including my co-host here.
Yes, I've had a lot of fun. And I'm almost ashamed to say it's taken up my Ingress time. But
Yeah, I don't know that that's necessarily such a bad thing because we've got to move on to our topic in a little bit here and get off of Wallaby. But one of the things I really do like about this game is it's so much more cooperative than like Ingress is, and it's very much a friendly competition, if anything.
that's true. That's true. I'm amazed at the generosity of people that I've come across.
Indeed.
So now, at the beginning of the show, we mentioned that we're going to talk about using geocaching.com's caches along a route. We've talked about this feature in the several past shows, including just last week. So I thought it was about time we go over the feature in a little more detail. It's one of those premium features that is only at geocaching.com. So if you're not a premium member, you'll need to get access. You'll need to upgrade to get access to caches along a route. There are a couple of options right now through the geocaching.com site. We're starting with $9.99 US for 3 months, or $29.99 US for an entire year of premium access to geocaching.com.
So if you're not a premium member, you're not going to be able to take advantage of what we're going to tell you about right now. But it is a nice thing to have that premium membership, and we'll have another show at some point kind of going over what all of the premium features are. But if you're just looking for like that summer trip season, you can do that $9.99, I think you said it was, for the 3 months.
Right.
And those are auto-renewing, so you have to go in and cancel it. But that's an option that if you don't want to pay for that full $30 a year, where you can make it, the 3 months when you're going to use it, take advantage of it and only spend $10.
Mm-hmm. Now I know I'm going to round it up from $29.99 to $30. The $30 a year doesn't have to be auto renewing. I'm not sure about the $10 for 3 months.
Yeah, the $10 is auto renewing, and then at $30 you have the option for auto renewing or not.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the two different options, and pick which one you want. For most of us, I think we're doing the $30 option that auto renews because we don't want to be without our premium membership, because that means so many of those awesome features go away.
Exactly. Last year, I waited. I think I went 2 months without premium membership, so that when I renewed, it fell in on my birthday. So that was a nice gift that the kids can give me as a renewal to geocaching.com.
Yeah, and one of the things that we didn't mention that we probably should is there are gift cards for geocaching.com available that you can purchase from some of the outdoor retailers, and most of the geocaching retailers will have those cards. So if you're looking for a gift, that is a really nice way to go. And at least on their iOS app, I haven't checked the Android app, you can do an annual membership as an in-app purchase for the full year. So for the $29.99, in the iTunes store, you can upgrade to that annual membership there, non-auto-renewing, of course. So if you've got those gift cards that you picked up from the big box store on sale, then that's a way to cut your costs down a little bit for the geocaching.com membership as well.
I never considered that. Get the iTunes gift cards on sale and use that to renew for geocaching.com. Oh, you're
Indeed.
Full of good ideas.
Indeed. Okay. Well, let's talk about ways that we can actually use the caches along a route. Before we even get into how to actually set these up, what are some of the things that you're going to use that for? And obviously, the driving routes can be set up really easily with the provided tool online.
Exactly.
And that's what most people are going to use. I'd say probably 99% of the people using caches along a route are looking for just that. I'm driving from point A to point B. What are those caches along the way? Where are the rest stops that I'm going to want to hit?
Exactly. And that's primarily what I use it for. Now, you can also use it for custom routes. Now, one of the things that I've done around my city is I have created a custom route in my area, because my city, of what city is perfectly circular or square? I've created a custom route with a nice wide swath on either side, and I've been able to cover my town, and that's how I get my regular pocket queries.
Yeah, using those custom routes, which it's just we'll get into a little bit later, but it's just a export from something like Google Earth. You can export your track files, all kinds of stuff like that.
Or you can make it directly in geocaching.com.
I thought that actually only allowed for the driving directions, unless you. Well, no, I think it does only allow for the driving directions.
Okay.
Because it snaps to the roads, I believe.
When I did it, it was able to do that. Maybe they've changed that feature since then.
Yeah, there have been some changes made. We'll have to maybe go into it a little bit during the show here and test it out to see what it actually is going to do. But the tool in the website, in the caches along route, does want to snap to the road. So it doesn't work so well for things like the bike routes. But what I had done is, and bike routes don't really exist on most of the maps, like the hike bike trails,
right?
The rail trail stuff. That's not a road. It's a path, and unless you're using like OpenStreetMaps or something like that, it's probably not going to have those routes on there. So I went and drew in, long before OpenStreetMaps was actually any good even, some of the local hike bike trails around here, and uploaded them and made them available for everyone. But I drew those by hand using Google Earth, and then just exported them and uploaded them. So those hike bike routes, like we mentioned last week, are really nice, and they may already be created. You might not even have to go and do the work yourself, but if you have one that's not there, something like Google Earth is a great way to put those together.
And Daryl, there are a lot of people like yourself that have gone and created those routes and uploaded them, so you can go search for those and use them. You don't have to go reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, definitely. Now, some considerations before we get into actually how to use it. The caches along a route are limited to 500 miles, or 800 kilometers, and 500 points. You can preview on maps or download a pocket query right there without doing anything really. But one thing to remember is that 500 miles or 500 point limit, well, really the 500 miles, I guess, it's going to take the caches closest to that route file and work out. And we'll get into that limitation a little bit early, or a little bit later. But it's just like any pocket query, you are limited to 1,000 caches. So if you have 2 caches per mile over that 500 miles, you're going to max it out, and anything outside of those 2 caches per mile average aren't going to show up. So there are some issues that may cause you some problems as you get into this, and you'll have to chop that down into maybe 100-mile segments or something like that.
Exactly. If you try to hit a power trail, you're going to max out those things. It'll still say it's going for the full 500 miles, but once it hits 1,000 caches, it's done.
Yep, it just chops it off. Now, for more information, aside from what we're going to talk about here, you can visit the Groundspeak Help Center, and that's 1.4 titled Trip Planner Caches Along a Route, and there's also some basic information on the user route page. But, Padcop, why don't you go over just how to get into it and all of that kind of quick, easy stuff.
Well, you're going to want to access your profile from the right side of the page under User Routes heading. Or we'll provide a link on the show notes for you to click onto. The next step on that is create a route. This uses Google Maps to actually create a driving directions for you. The other option is to find routes, and this is what I do most of the time. So you search your routes from those made up from the public and other cachers. So you might want to search for something like Route 66. Or some of those biking and hiking trails that Daryl talked about earlier. If you want to, you can go into Google Earth, and upload your own GPX or KML route. Um, so it's a little odd that this actually takes you to the same place as the Find Routes link. And right over there, there's a click to upload route tab. You upload your GPX, KMZ, or KML files. So you got to be careful because those track files are more than likely going to exceed that 500 point limit. So you might want to hand draw some of these paths using something like Google Earth, or download from other sources, or simply if it's a GPX file, you can go in and remove some of those extra points.
Yeah, and the track files can be really cool too. If you want to run out, actually ride a trail and come back, you can take that track file and use that to upload and pass to other people and have a good trails. Especially when you're in some of these parks with the winding trails, that can be really helpful. And if you go back and listen to the what was it? The Ontario Trails Project. I forgot to put it in the notes. We were talking with Northern Penguin, who does a lot of that kind of work, and he has to average those out. And, it's a good way to get some good track files. So if you're looking to do that and build your own routes, you might want to go back and check out that episode, which of course we'll include in the show notes as well. So much to check out, I guess, in the show notes this week.
Oh, I love the show notes. But
so do I.
Because you do them, Daryl. Now, we'll start with creating those driving directions from the Create a Route link. You put in your starting and ending location by city, state, address, zip code, or in decimal degrees. So, pop your GPS over into decimal degrees and get, your locations that way. GC numbers are not accessible, so you got to use the decimal degrees from the cache page. Here's one that I'm going to take from Tacoma to the geocaching block party in August. There you go. Daryl's typing all this in for me. Oh, Daryl, you're a good typist too.
Relatively good.
We're going to start from in the town, which, it doesn't necessarily work for my house, but we've got a wide enough swath that it's going to be just fine. Enter in the decimal degrees of your destination, and you add the points by clicking and dragging the route in the preview map. So if you wanted to make it a little longer, you wanted to, get some caches on the other side of the mountains, you can drag those points. And if you're watching this, you'll see how the colored field changes to include those routes. And if you want to take a different road than it chose, you can do all this. So if I wanted to go over to Kent, like Daryl's pointing out right there, that is so easy to do just by clicking and adding a point, much like creating a via point on your GPS. Now, beneath the preview map, you'll also have the option to select the distance from the center of the route to be included in your search. This preview is indicated by the yellow highlight on either side of the route. This allows you to make sure the areas are covered to a certain distance, but there are many caches, and we'll talk about them when we get into the PQ section. Remember that the system will fill in the query based on the distance from center. So if the cache limit is hit, it's going to stop. That 5 or 1,000 cache limit is hit. It's going to stop before it reaches the end of the route. Next, click Save Route Changes, and guess what? You're going to save the route. On that page, you'll be asked for a name, description, keywords, or whether you want to include it in the public directory. And I always include mine in the public directory. I just think it's nice. 9 times out of 10, everywhere I want to go is already in the public directory. So I use those. The keyword section is used just to make your cache along a route easier to find in the search. You can put anything you want in there. You could put, he's typing in block party. You could put in the bad cop. You could put in, whatever you want. So, as we said earlier, the public directory is there for the premium members of geocaching.com to find and use the routes themselves. And once a route has been created, it's not static. When you go and run, you can save this as a pocket query, and it will go and run that. So it will pull just the current caches, not the caches when the route was originally created. So we talked about in GeoGearHeads Beta 22 social media safety. You might want to go listen to that episode and have some ideas on hand when you create a route and when you make it public. You probably don't want to say from my home to my work.
Yeah, which is another good reason why you'd want to use Tacoma rather than your actual street address.
Exactly.
So if you are making it public, be a little smart about that.
Exactly.
So that's all it takes to actually create a driving route file. It's pretty quick and easy and makes it really nice. I remember when they first actually implemented that, it wasn't anywhere near that easy.
And I remember it was only KML files.
Yeah, well, I think they actually did take GPX files at first, but it wasn't working, so they disabled it. And then it was like, I want to say 2 or 3 months before it came back and actually worked. So they've come a long way. But I think the next thing we do want to show is how to make those KML or GPS files well, not actually how to make them so much, but how to upload those, so that if you had that track log or if you have a route that you created, you can just go and grab that and upload it. And we're actually going to do that now with that Macomb Orchard Trail I talked about previously. And all you have to do is click on the upload button. On the choose file button first, and then you go to your file, whatever that is that you want to upload, whether it's a KML or GPX file.
You can pull it right off your GPS if you want to.
You could, though I don't really recommend that for the 500-point limit that we talked about earlier. You might have some problems, but you just upload that file, and it will come up with that same information, essentially. Actually, no, I don't know. It does not, actually. It comes up first, sorry about that, with the routes that are in that file, and you have to tell it which one you want to do, and you can preview it. You can also edit it right from there, but when you're done, you just hit the Save Selected Route, and then we get that page back, and whoops. As I scroll way too fast on screen here. Sorry for those of you who are watching. Didn't mean to make you seasick. But it will show up then in your created routes, which this is actually the next step altogether, which is that middle option that we actually talked about from the profile page. Basically, the two options from the profile page below the create a route take you to the same place, and it's just a matter of the tabs. So you want to go to your created routes, and you'll find all of the routes that you created and saved there. So like my new route file, which actually I already had it in here, so we'll just go in and take a look at that. If you click through in the list of your route files, it will actually give you the preview right there in the page. And then again, you have all of the options for the name of the route, what the description is, and all of your keywords. And again, you can create it as a public directory option or not. And I will say too, if you're actually going to go start searching, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, it is really nice if you can put in as many of those keywords as you can, because at this point, that public directory is so cluttered, it is really tough sometimes to find good routes in there. There's so much stuff that has too many keywords that anything shows up. But it is nice to share that with everyone if it's a good route file, especially if you've gone through the work. Share it and save someone else the work.
Exactly.
Now, we did mention the links a little bit at the bottom below the save route. You have the delete route, you have the modify route links, You can create the pocket query of route, and we'll get into that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
You can create a GPX of the route. So if you want to take that driving direction that you've already created and save it out and put it on like your GPS as a route, you can download that GPX file right there just by clicking on the create GPX route of a route. So that's a nice one. But none of those links down there, the modify, the create pocket query, or the GPX, are going to work until you've actually saved your route. So if you don't save the route, you don't want to click those links yet. So make sure that you've saved before you go into that.
Now, Daryl, one of the things I like to talk about is how wide do you make your selection off the center of that route?
Well, that actually gets more into the pocket query portion, I guess. So maybe we'll just jump over there. We've kind of already talked about the searching, and there's not a whole lot that I think we really need to talk about in the searching there. So why don't we just jump into how to make those route files into a pocket query?
Okay.
So we already mentioned it a little bit earlier with those links down at the bottom, but if you've got your route saved and you're ready to go, you can just click on that create pocket query of route from that detail page. There's also a quick list, a quick option in that list. But when you click that create route, it's going to come up, or create a pocket query, it's going to come up with that pocket query kind of page. It is a little different than what we're used to from other things. The name of the route becomes the default name of your pocket query. You have all of those typical options like generating and what days, time, delete it once, all that kind of stuff. But right below that is what the bad cop was just talking about. Was the search radius, and then below it is the number of caches, just like you'd have normally. But there are sliders here. So in my case here, the default is 3.1 miles or 5 kilometers, and we can beef that up if we're wanting to fill in a city like Bad Cop was talking about, or if you're doing more like a bike route or a look for the rest area type caches, you're going to want it a little lower. I usually go no more than a mile off the road if I'm going on a driving trip to get those rest area caches, because even then, you're going to get some caches that someone's put like under a bridge kind of deal where it's not accessible off the freeway. So the tighter it is, the less driving off route you're going to have to do. Especially for like the bike trails, even like a half mile is probably too much.
For driving, and I have to admit, I'm a dad, so I get in a car, I want to get to that destination. Now, when I'm caching, I'll slow that down a little bit, but I still want to get to that destination. I'm the whole dad, don't make me stop this car, that kind of thing. I've limited it down to a quarter mile off of my route. And I find even at that, there's a lot of caches, that are in cul-de-sacs at, near the freeway and that I look at and go, well, it's I'm not going to get to that one. Or, it's a trailhead right off the road. Well, I'm not going to get to that as I'm driving. I don't want to stop and, do a quarter mile down a trail.
Yeah. Well, and there is a flip side of this too, which is kind of what we mentioned in the last episode about the bike trails. If your route is a little bit off the actual trail, and this will happen a lot when you have something like those bike routes and you're trying to stick to that 500 points, you have to make those lines a little bit more coarse, so it's not that nice, gentle, smooth slope. And I've seen some of those routes where the line is as much as a quarter mile off of the actual road or trail, because they've had to simplify it to make it work for the length, to fit those 500 points over whatever length it is. So you can have some problems, and that's why it's always nice to run a preview to make sure. Run the preview to make sure that you have an effective width for whatever you're going to do. So don't, and this is something I typically do with any of my pocket queries, since it only lets you run those once per day. I don't usually do the pocket query right away. I'll usually set all those check boxes to be off for the run. I'll go and
Right.
make my pocket query,
Hmm.
save it, go and preview it, make sure that it's doing what I want it to do. Then, if it's looking right, I'll actually go and flag it to run so that I don't have any problems with that, not being what I wanted it to be.
Exactly. I do the same thing. Now, the
Oh, good
next
to know
step.
we're on the same page.
Yeah, yeah. I know. It doesn't matter what the pocket query is. If it's a radius search, I always go and make sure. Okay, did I max out my 1,000 caches? And if I maxed out my 1,000 caches, I know I didn't get the complete radius. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good tip.
and
And
same thing with the routes. If you're hitting your 1,000 cache limit, you know that you're not getting everything.
yeah, and another thing that we should mention really quick before we move on, we talked about that setting and for the distance,
Hmm.
and you do get to preview that on the map above. Those of you who are watching the video version can see it's like a teal color that's outside the line, looks like a little worm in our case. But as you drop down, that teal line will actually narrow, and as you increase the distance, it actually gets wider. So you can see how much you're going to cover, and it really does get ridiculous. In the case that we're showing here, we've got 4.85 miles selected right now, which takes you from one township to another. And
Right.
if you're doing a bike trip, that's not going to be something you want to have showing up.
Exactly. But if you're using it to cover an odd shaped area that you cache in, that's perfect. And we may have lost Daryl. Caches. And if I'm really lucky, webcam caches. I leave out obviously events, letterbox hybrids, unknowns because I don't have time to solve a puzzle. Uh, any of the events I already said, or GPS adventure exhibits, the where I goes, I'm not prepared for. So I just leave those. I leave those out. I'm looking for traditional caches only.
Yeah, and typically is when you're doing this kind of stuff, the driving trips, you want to go for the easier, quicker caches.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing something like the bike route, you might want to do those. And we've mentioned on some of the previous shows being able to use that updated coordinates for things like the puzzle caches. If you're going to do puzzle solves and put those in, definitely leave those in there because those updated coordinates will appear in the GPX file that gets downloaded. So
And
that way you can actually, find those too. It all depends on what you're looking for, but generally when you're doing those driving trips, quick and easy.
quick and easy. And of course, this is per pocket query, so you can set up, ones with puzzle caches if that's your goal. Um, I don't care what type of container. I leave all containers typed or all containers checked. The next option is the filter options. I look for ones that are enabled and that I haven't found. Other than that, don't really care.
Well, I'll usually make sure that I check it so that it's not going to have my caches in there because I do sometimes get my caches in my pocket queries for things like, bike routes.
Well, may not be a bad idea to have them in there for maintenance so you remember where they are.
Yeah, it could be, but generally, I don't need to see those when I'm fighting
Right.
with the limits of the pocket queries.
And there's nothing more embarrassing than the not being able to find your own cache. Now, the next step is terrain and difficulty. Personally, when I'm driving, when I'm traveling, I'm not looking for anything greater than a 3. And even a 2.5 is pushing it. I want the quick park and grabs. Or a high difficulty where it could take you 45 minutes to find this thing. That's not the kind of caches I'm looking for while, caching along a route. But that could be different if you're doing a hike. You've got some more time. You're willing to do the higher difficulty, higher terrain.
Indeed. And then, of course, you also have some of the other options in here that we've talked about before, like the attributes, and don't use scuba for power trails, but people do, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, we also have the output to email address, and your options for compressing it as a zip and all that kind of stuff. So it's really at this point very much like your standard pocket queries. You can do your previews, your map, your previews kind of thing. So it's all pretty easy and standard.
Without a doubt, and that's what we like.
Yep. So that's kind of your crash course to using caches along a route. We'd love to hear from you. Anything that you've done with the caches along a route that other people might want to use as tips, make sure to let us know by calling those into 206-350-3647 or emailing us through the GeoGearHeads at cachemaniacs.com address. And we'll drop those in one of our future shows so that people can take advantage of your expertise in these areas.
We love feedback of any kind. So don't forget to check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this, which we'll be updating, and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads at cachemaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniac shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show's copyright 2013 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cache with a Cachemaniac.